to the Fatality Free Future podcast. I'm John Barclay.
My name is Holly Ferguson. This is the podcast where we discuss the challenges and possibilities of creating a fatality-free future. I'm extra excited for today's episode because we are joined by leadership consultant Jeff Dean. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, thanks, Holly. Thanks,
welcome,
John.
Jeff.
Jeff, we've brought you in because you have a rich background and experience in safety culture transformation across high-risk industries. I remember when I first met you, I think you'd come back from working in Kazakhstan. Was that right?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. And you've also led large-scale consulting teams internationally, helping to build high-performance cultures and empowering people through coaching and facilitation. I would love to know how you got into this industry, how you got to where you are today, before we dive into this episode's topic.
Yeah, thanks. Kind of a strange tale. I had been working in mining. Before that, I was an accountant. I spent a couple of years doing my safety masters and thinking that was my next big career, and started doing that for a couple of organisations. And I ended up on a new mine site being built. And at the time, the safety culture in this and the results were pretty bad on that site. And the owning company ended up bringing in a consulting company to work on safety culture. And we all went on a bit of a journey on that site over 18 months. And it went from being one of their worst sites for safety to the best. And it was an amazing transformation. And it was about leaders showing care and concern and respect for people. It was focusing on building relationships. It was focusing on looking for the things that are being done well and safely, and acknowledging and reinforcing that. And the results, I guess, followed that. And the culture changed. It became a great place to work. I got to know the consultants, and I was lucky enough they offered me a job. So that was the start of a career that I didn't think was something that I'd ever knew about. Yeah.
Very similar to mine, in regards to starting the chemical industry, getting into a sort of a safety role. I had the fatality and a bit of a response to that, and then meeting a consultant to come in and transform that, and being a part of that journey, and then getting to know the consultants and joining them there. And I think that's why I love hearing your story as well, because it's such a great example where we as consultants get the opportunity to take people on a journey and transform their life. I know a lot of people who have gone on to a different career after the work we've done.
It just really was something that I was passionate about, and it was something that was brand new, and it was exciting, and the difference that could be made was much. It blew my mind.
Today we've brought you in to discuss leadership capabilities, and I don't think we could actually get a better guest to discuss these. Just seeing your work over the years and hearing from leaders how much you have changed their perspective on their leadership has been really wonderful to see. When we talk about performance and safety, leadership is something that consistently emerges, usually as a key element for success. And I'm interested in your perspective about why that is, and why just relying on systems isn't enough.
We need to have systems to give us the processes of how to do things and the steps to take to do things safely. And without them, everything falls over. You can't just have good intentions, and you can't just have a commitment to being safe without that. But if we only rely on the procedures, and if we only rely on, expecting people to follow them, they might be written poorly, there might be competing commitments, there might be all sorts of other things that are going on, that we need leaders, we need safety leaders to engage people, to find out, what are the perceptions on site, and how can we help to shift them or move the needle? How can we inspire and empower people? So I think, it's both. You need both.
Systems can set the structure and some fundamental standards and processes to work through, but they can never really accommodate for every scenario. They just sort of give us the guidelines and I guess the structure that we want to do. But it's the leaders who have an opportunity and a role to look at every situation in context and work with teams to actually work out the best processes to go through. That's why the leadership shadow becomes such an important aspect to the way people will experience work.
Before we came into the room, Holly, you and I were talking that I love books, and I have a library. I just don't like reading. And, it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I'm now starting to listen to some audiobooks in a way that, works for me. Been excited about this book for a long time, and it's called Gorilla in the Cockpit, and I sort of listened to it about a month ago. And Gorilla in the Cockpit is about why major capital projects or mega projects fail. So when we're talking about major capital projects, it's things like building the Sydney Opera House, building, a large bridge or infrastructure project, building a gas plant or a refinery somewhere. The cost is usually $1 billion or more, or sometimes, tens of billions of dollars. This book goes through and looks at case studies from different industries and all around the world about, what are some of the precursors to failure in these major capital projects. And failure, let's talk about that. It could be that it just doesn't get completed at all, which is rare. What's more common is that it gets completed, but it maybe doesn't deliver on all the promises that it said that it was going to do, or failure might look like 3 times over budget, or failure might look like it took 5 years to build instead of 2. The book starts to go through, well, it wasn't the lack of systems, it wasn't the lack of project management, plans and Gantt charts and things like this. And they use this, I guess, metaphor of a white box and a black box. And the white box, all of the processes and the systems and the budgets and all those types of things that are, visible and agreed on and sort of structured for how the project is going to run, sort of lives in one box. And it's usually not that causes the failures. What lives in the black box is, I guess, where that bumps into people, and bumps into things like, are the different stakeholders aligned? Whether it's the owners or the subcontractors or the government bodies or other places, are there competing things there? Have we sufficiently enrolled and engaged those people? Are we on the same page? And so it's often the human side of projects and that have it fail, and that's where we need leadership.
Over your years of working in this space, what leadership capabilities, and from what you've learned as well through books like Gorilla in the Cockpit, what leadership capabilities do you think are essential for getting a great impact and making these projects, these businesses, companies successful?
Look, it's everything from, are we appreciating and acknowledging safe behaviours or good behaviours? Are we reinforcing those types of things? Are we showing care and concern? And what does showing care and concern look like on a daily basis? What actions are we taking so that people actually know that we care about them? There's a million capabilities, but I'd like to focus on 2 things. First one being, how good are we as leaders at sharing our vision of the future? And the second one being, the capability of coaching. And how we can develop our people. When we talk about leadership and what makes a good leader, sometimes we go back to someone who's charismatic that can bring people on board, get them marching, get them in the right direction and moving towards the goal. But one key thing in there, which is a skill, and I don't think we often think about it as a skill, is how well we can speak about the vision for the team, the vision for the organisation, and have people really see it and feel it. I recently watched, I think it was your podcast number 11 with Dorrit, and you spoke about the power of storytelling.
Yes, that's right.
And this is kind of like that, right? Because with storytelling, we know that it's powerful. We know that the neurology and the psychology of it is that when I'm telling a story, there's something that happens where the feelings of what's in the story get recreated in other people, and you end up with some shared experience. I think that sharing the vision of the team or the organisation is a form of storytelling. It's just that we're not looking back and talking about something that's already happened, where we're flexing the skill of speaking about a possible future. And it's sort of like, imagine that, you've got a small business and that, the budgets have just been done. The forecast for the new year is out. The team sort of sits down for a meeting and they get told that, this year's forecast is that we're going to have a 20% increase in sales. everyone sort of sits around the table and thinks about how that applies to them and what they're now accountable for through the year. If it's just left at that, people will walk out of the room and they'll have mixed feelings about whether that's achievable, whether it's possible, whether they are invested into going for that target, whether they think it's possible or not. Imagine if that meeting went differently. Imagine if the leader, who was presenting it said, "Man, we've got an exciting year ahead. Our plan for this year is that we want to expand the different products that we're going to bring to market. We're going to hopefully have some opportunities for people around the table here to lead some projects or teams. We're going to need to have some more people. We've got some exciting things, and I know that you've all had things in your own budgets that we've not been able to do. Our plan for this year is to bring some of those great ideas and projects and make them happen. That's going to take something from everyone. It's going to mean that to fund that, we're going to need to increase our sales by 20%, and we'll have a talk about what challenges that's going to be and what we're going to need to make that happen. If you just pause it there, that conversation is slightly different. It feels slightly different. It's starting to breathe life into a future that isn't there. And I think if leaders spend a bit more time in the future themselves thinking about, well, if we had this fatality-free future, what would that look like in 12 months or 18 months? What would it feel like to work on this site? What would people be talking about it? What would I see happening? Spend some time thinking into the future and getting clear about what that looks like yourself. Because the clearer it is for you, then you can breathe life into that and have your team start to experience a possibility of something that could happen. And, it's storytelling. They start to see and experience and feel that.
I love that, right? Because we throw the term around, what's your vision? What's your vision of success? And it becomes very, very tactical in description. We want to achieve this outcome, and it becomes very action orientated. And if you sort of lean into a bit of the Simon Sinek stuff, it's the what. What is it we want to achieve? With not a lot of the how and the why and the excitement or the possibilities or the opportunities that come with that why. And, so that storytelling part is not just about, hey, we just want to achieve this outcome in 12 months' time or 2, whatever that is. It's actually, think about it as a leader. What does it mean to you, and why is it really important to you, and what's the excitement it brings for everyone else? And I love it because when we talk about storytelling, most people's minds do go back to just sharing experience, what's happened to me in the past, to sort of help influence the way we think about the future. And that can still be really prevalent there.
It's really powerful.
Yeah. But thinking about that from a future point of view and talking about stories about what you're seeing, experience and getting in the future state is just an amazing way to articulate that. And I remember coaching a leader at an organisation a couple of years ago. It blew me away. Frontline supervisor really blew me away. They had this pre-developed charter for their team, and it was sort of a half a page vision, but he didn't need it. He'd put a lot of thought into it. He'd really thought about that future state for the team. But he could stand up in front of any pre-start meeting, whatever it was, with his team, and articulate the way they were going to be, the way they were going to experience every day, the excitement they were going to have coming to work each day because of the outcomes that they're achieving and the pride they're going to have as a team. It just blew me away to see someone that typically go, well, we're just going to be the best team. We're going to have great teamwork. We're going to get these great outcomes. There was a story to it that was really authentic and heartfelt from him.
Jeff, once these leaders are starting to practice some of these key capabilities like storytelling, enrolling people in the vision of the future, coaching, for some of them that might be the first time they're even delving into this. So we want them to start. They've started it. How do we then move them into actually evolving these skills and getting better at them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really like the idea of the power of cumulative gains. Sir Dave Brailsford was the coach of the British cycling team, and they went to win a number of Tour de France's and some Olympics and things like this. But the focus of that team was on, what can we do just a little bit better? Like, what are the 1%ers? What can we do slightly better tomorrow than we did today? And I think that's also true of leadership, because whether it's you want to develop public speaking or how to deliver a really great pre-start, if you're starting from a place of I don't like talking in public, and you sometimes see other people lead and they do amazingly and they've got great engagement, and you think, well, that's not where I am. For me, it's about what can I do tomorrow to make sure that I have great eye contact with the whole team? What can I do, once I've mastered that, what can I do to make sure I'm projecting my voice well so the people at the back can hear me? Next week it might be, what can I do to make sure that I'm not the only voice in that? How can I bring in other people so there's more interest, there's more energy? How can I get better at asking questions? And it's not that you're doing all of these things at once. It's not a race. And so I think if we start speaking about vision, start one-on-one, start with a person on the team and have a vision conversation and risk it, share your vision with them. Try that with a few other people, and then try it in a group setting, and then reflect at the end of the day, how did that go? What went well? What could I do slightly differently next time I talk about this? For me, it's about those little 1%ers constantly reflecting on, what am I doing as a leader, and how can I slightly change and improve the way I do it next time.
The bit that stood out to me in there is what I think leaders can add to their way of continually improving is just you've tried something or practicing something, but actually reflecting on that. How do you think leaders get better at being honest with themselves around how they're going with that?
If I have a debrief with a person or a team about something, it's normal human behaviour to go to what they think went wrong in that scenario, what I did terribly, where I failed. It's where we love to be, right? And it takes some discipline to start focusing on all of the things that went well first. And that's one of the things when I'm coaching a team or coaching a person, I focus on. So you've just delivered a pre-start, you've just done a particular thing, what went well. And even if they start talking about the things that they weren't happy with, I said, we'll get to those. Let's start with, what went well, and developing that skill of debriefing about, see how many things that they can come up with. And then it's sometimes challenging if I'm just doing this and judging myself, right? And it is. Then I'll step in and I'll say, these are the things that I think went really well as well. And we'll just keep asking that question until we exhaust it. And then we'll move to, well, if you were going to do this again, what would you do differently? And that's a different question to what went terribly. There's no blame, there's no judgment. It's the thinking around continuous improvement. It's, how can I move the needle? What's my 1% to do it slightly better tomorrow? And that makes it more empowering, and that makes it less me looking for where I've done things wrong and I guess validating the self-talk that I have about something. It's like you're looking for, what can I do differently tomorrow?
Something we used to talk about as well is the judgment or the labelling we put on things, like whether it's good, it's bad, it's right, it's wrong, those sorts of things. We do that to ourselves, but it should be just more about what are you noticing? Like, what are you noticing about that, whatever it is, pre-start, giving feedback, whatever context that, or articulating your vision to your team. What did you notice about that? Well, I noticed really good engagement, like eye contact with the team, and the team were recognising things. It's just noticing. It doesn't mean that's good or bad, right or wrong or anything. It's just what are you noticing about what that experience is. Once you've sort of exhausted that, what have I noticed, you can then get into, well, next time, what would make that even better? What would actually make a slightly different, experience with that? And it can be the smaller things. Maybe it's holding eye contact for a bit longer, or maybe it's, that person was speaking, I got too excited and I jumped in and cut them off, and maybe next time I can let that go a bit longer. And it's just noticing things, I think, is the big part. And it's a similar conversation I ask leaders is, so when you reflect back on that, what were some things you noticed? What were some of the experiences you can remember from that process? And it's just really interesting, because you're right, most of them will go to, I didn't do this very well, and I didn't do this and I didn't do that as well. Let's actually unpack the whole experience. What else did you notice?
That's something about coaching. It's a great coaching question, right? Because it's not a question that we ask ourselves. I don't ask myself at the end of the day, what did I notice about doing that? That was my second area around, what capabilities are really important for leaders, and it's coaching. And there's a great book, it's called Modern Effective Coaching by Miles Downey. And he has a definition of coaching that I like, and it's coaching is facilitating learning, development, and performance of another. And there's a couple of key things in there. So it's facilitating. So John, you do a lot of facilitating. What's a definition of facilitating?
It's getting people involved in the conversation or the thought process. So it's asking questions, setting up constructs for people to get involved in.
And who's doing the work?
They are.
Yeah. So facilitating a coaching conversation is exactly that. It's holding the space. It's asking the questions. It's listening. It's allowing some space for them to do their best thinking. And, leaders, often are time poor. And so it's easy to fall into being directional or telling. Someone comes to you with a challenge or a problem, and so I've seen that 50 times today. When we're time poor, it's very easy to say, well, this is what you need to do. And the person goes away and does it, and we can get on to, putting out the fires that we're needing to, or whatever we're dealing with at the time. And sometimes being directive and telling is the most appropriate way forward. But if we live there, it's a challenge. If we live there in the being directive and the telling, then it does a couple of things. It means that we're solving people's problems for them all the time. And that creates a rod for our back, because they're constantly, they'll keep coming back.
Oh, it reminds me of the leadership diamond and the victim and
persecutor,
a rescuer. Yeah.
The other side of that is being non-directive. It's listening. It's asking questions that raise awareness. It's sometimes things like listening and then paraphrasing or summarizing what someone has said, so that they can hear it from a different perspective, and then they can kind of think, well, actually, no, it's more like this, and they continue to get clarity around their goal or their problem or their challenge. Coaching is a superpower for leaders if they really get into it. There's some great leaders that ask great questions and help to move the thinking bubble. Coaching is a skill that can be dove into, and there's many levels, and I think it's a great skill for leaders to build capability around, because it supercharges people's ability to learn and build their capabilities quicker.
Jeff, you've given us some really great tangible things for leaders to implement, even just your advice on change doesn't have to be overnight, it can be incremental, is huge. Is there anything else, maybe a key takeaway that I can ask you about for leaders to increase their impact, maybe even today?
There's maybe two things that come to mind really quickly in that space, and one of them is being reflective. We just spoke about doing a bit of a self-debrief and what did I do well and what could I improve on. And so there has to be some level of reflection as a leader, because otherwise we just keep doing what we've been doing. We go into autopilot. We deal with things the same way that we dealt with them last week and last month. And, look, I spent 12 years as an accountant, and so, you ask an accountant how to do something, and they'll look in the file and say, this is the way we did it last year, and then they'll copy that, right? And so it's a bit of human nature. So there has to be some level of reflection. Where am I building strengths? Where am I happy? Where are some gaps that I want to go after? So that's number one. And then number two comes back to, what can I do to move the needle on one of that? And being intentional, bringing some intentionality to your leadership. What I mean by intentionality to your leadership is think about, what is one thing that I'm going to focus on for a fixed period of time? And it might be for a day, it might be for a week, it might be a swing if you're working, FIFO, and it might be I'm going to focus on one element of my leadership, and it might be I want to go out and ask great questions. So it's not just asking yes or no. I want to hear more from my team. Being intentional about that. It might be I want to focus on looking for the good stuff. The things that people are doing safely or people are doing well, and I want to go and verbally acknowledge those people and have them feel valued, have them feel respected, reinforce that stuff. It might be I want to, share my vision better. So creating some opportunities about how you're going to do that this week. So number one, be reflective on where you are and where you want to focus. Number two, be intentional for a period of time about going and doing those things. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be smooth. Just have the right conversation.
Jeff, thank you so much for joining us on the Fatality Free Future podcast and sharing your wisdom today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatality Free Future podcast. Head to our Fatality Free Future hub on barclays.com for more information and to access everything we spoke about in this episode.